On August 3, 2014, 31-year-old Mario Deane was doing what a lot of young Jamaican men do, smoking a ganja spliff. Police arrested him, and when his friend came to bail him, wouldn't let him out. Later that day, Mario had been beaten so badly that he died 3 days after that on Independence Day. On May 22, 2025, 3 police officers were convicted in relation to his death. Look, this was a terrible episode in Jamaican history. It's something we must never forget. We must try and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. I'm Deane Jackson-Miller, gonna break down for you what happens. Thank you so much for joining me courtside. Time for tea. Mario Deane's mother, Mercia Fraser, told Radio Jamaica after the verdict came down. She said, "It's a sigh of relief. I feel much lighter. After all the pressure you go through, it's overwhelming. I thank God that He hold me. I could eke it out till this time. I don't know how I would feel if I didn't stick to the race. It wasn't easy, but today I feel relief. I used to say I'm not even sure I would get justice in Jamaica, but my God, it's not just Mario who get justice today. I know many more people who lost their sons in this kind of condition. I thank God for all the support. JFJ, Indicom, everybody showed up. There are times I really feel weak, like I couldn't make it, but I promised my son on his deathbed that I would see to it that he got justice." Let me first say kudos to my colleagues at the Gleaner, Janet Silvera and Adrian Frater. They first broke the news of this in 2014 in a front page story called Deadly Beating. Kudos to the Indicom investigators. Kudos to the prosecutors for the work they put in. Kudos to Jamaicans for Justice. They were there with this from the very beginning. Kudos to Mario's mother, Miss Fraser, and everybody who stood with her for over 10 years, making sure Jamaica never forgot this one. Always bringing to public attention what was happening and what was not happening in relation to this case. Over 10 years to get a conviction for somebody who was killed in 2014. I do have to say there were COVID delays in that time frame that couldn't be avoided, but we still need to do better. When you hear Mario's mother saying she thought she would never be able to get justice for Mario in Jamaica, the whole of it's supposed to shame. So let me take you through everything that happened, alright? And I'm going to use a mix of chronology from Jamaicans for Justice because, as I said, they've been doing this from the beginning. They've been following this from the very beginning, and also different sources in the papers. After Mario was taken into police custody for having a ganja spliff, right, a friend came to bail him with the papers he needed. Routine matter, alright, routine. I used to cover court in Montego Bay, and every Monday morning, police would have bring a whole bag of young men into court for possession of ganja spliff. The judge would have fined them $100 and let them go. So it's a routine, minor thing, this. So his friend Castell Mackenzie, who came to bail him, told the Gleaner at the time, he said, "When I went there, he was taken out of the cell. He was being processed to be released. While we were talking, he said he didn't like police, and the woman police who was dealing with the documents said she didn't like what he said. She handed me back the bail papers saying she was going to keep him locked up for an extra 2 hours, so I should come back at 5 o'clock. Mackenzie said instead of waiting until 5 o'clock, he went back at 3. When he went back, he was told Deane had been taken to the Cornwall Regional Hospital. So him no say when him left, not never do Mario. So I try to figure out what happened. And then him and the family start hear different things. First, they were told Mario fell off a bed. Then after that, they were told inmates had beaten him. Now, the evidence is that Mario was put into a cell with 3 men who were mentally ill. And on Independence Day 2014, 3 days after he had been put into that cell, he died from the beating he got. Now, this was a proper beating. This is what the forensic pathologist said at the trial as reported by the Star. He said Mario suffered a fractured skull, bleeding in the brain, internal injuries in the mouth and throat. He said Mario had swallowed some of his own blood into his lungs, leading to choking that contributed to his death. He said the cause of death, in summary, was severe blunt force injury to the head, resulting in a broken skull bone and bleeding in the brain, in association with manual strangulation of the neck, resulting in damage and bleeding in the neck and lack of oxygen. He said the injuries suggested Mario had been held down and hit against blunt surfaces during his beating. He had a total of 19 external injuries, including bruises consistent with finger marks on his arms and the back of his neck, and blunt force injuries on his head, shoulders, and waist. Now, 3 inmates were charged for the killing of Mario Deane, right? One of them, Damien Cargill, was found to suffer from schizophrenia. It was found that he didn't have the mental capacity to stand trial. The linguistics expert said in the report that Mr. Cargill is unable to produce human language, that he does not have the expressive and receptive skills of a native English or patois speaker, that communicating with him on areas unrelated to basic daily activities is not possible. Now, in 2018, the other 2 were found fit to stand trial. And in July 2020, almost 6 years after Mario Deane was beaten in police custody and died, the other 2 men, Marvin Orr and Adrian Morgan, pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the St. James Circuit Court. The judge sentenced them to 5 years and 6 months in prison, but they were set free immediately because they had already served that time. The whole story about mentally ill people and our justice system need a whole video, or probably a whole set of videos of its own. Not a time for that. So you may be wondering, hold on, if it's the inmates who beat him and they were convicted, how police come into it? How come police were charged? Corporal Elaine Stewart, District Constable Marlon Grant, and District Constable Juliana Clevon had been arrested by Indicom on charges of manslaughter, perverting the course of justice, and misconduct in a public office. This is what Indicom said at the time about the charges. They say Elaine Stewart willfully neglected to perform her duty, right? In that, without reasonable explanation or excuse, she refused to complete the processing of Mario Deane's bail, and that was an abuse of the public trust. So Indicom says Stewart, Grant, and Clevon failed to properly assess and monitor the risk of harm to Mario Deane. Also, that they failed to preserve the conditions of the cell where Mario Deane had been injured. Stewart was said with intent to pervert the course of public justice, had caused the cell where Deane had been beaten to be cleaned before the investigators could get there. So in summary, they never finished processing the bail. They didn't assess the risk of putting him in the cell with those inmates, and also the cleaning of the cell before the investigators got there. The manslaughter charge, now this is what is called gross negligence manslaughter, meaning that Mario died because of the grossly negligent behavior of the 3 police. Grossly negligent means very, 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 very negligent. They never do what them did supposed to do. In 2015, that's a year after Mario was killed, his mother, Mercia Fraser, led a demonstration outside the Barnett Street lockup to call for justice for her son, and that's something she has done over the years. In April 2018, Fadil Ferguson, he was in custody at the Barnett Street police station on the day that Mario Deane had been beaten, and he had allegedly implicated both the police as well as inmates. In a statement he gave to Indicom, he was shot and killed by unknown assailants, and he at the time was going to be the main witness in the case. In May 2018, a judge ruled that the 3 police should stand trial, and then we had a whole series of delays. The initial trial date for the police was September 21, 2017. JFJ counted at least 10 delays between 2017 and September 21, 2022. Just to say that in 2020, there was a delay because the accused wanted a jury trial. And to be fair, this was happening a lot at the time. Remember, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? But if an accused person wants a jury trial, they're entitled to one. So once they said they wanted a jury trial, then the case would have to be pushed back until we could start having jury trials again. Michael Jackson of Jamaicans for Justice had told Our Today in August 2024 that some of the other delays, for instance, were missing files and reports from the docket. And then juror shortage was the next big thing. Couldn't get enough jurors to start a trial. In 2023, JFJ had called for the trial to be moved out of St. James. In November 2024, it was finally moved to Westmoreland. And finally, the trial started March 2025, and then this guilty verdict, May 2025, more than 10 years after Mario Deane had been taken into police custody and ended up dead. Honestly, this is one of the episodes in Jamaican history we must never forget, that we should feel ashamed of, that we should try to ensure is never repeated. What do you think? Were you following the case? Were you like Miss Fraser also thinking there would never be justice for Mario? Want to hear what you think about this. Drop your comments below. Remember, be civil. And of course, like the video, share it with somebody you think might be interested, and subscribe to the channel. Alright, click that notification bell so you know anytime I drop a new video. I'm Deane. Thank you so much for watching. Back to tea.